everyone. Welcome back to episode 2 of our Let's Make a Dresden Quilt Along. Are you ready to move on in the Dresden process? I hope you tuned in to episode number 1. Previously on Let's Make a Dresden Quilt Along, we talked about supplies for the quilt along. I showed you the kit that you should have received by now. We talked about how to cut your Dresden blades, how to sew each individual Dresden blade to form the actual blade, and how to press the blades to make actual Dresden blades that look like this. So we talked about how to create this in episode 1. Now we are moving on to episode 2, and in this episode we are going to talk about your background fabric and the size to cut your blocks. We're going to talk about how to sew together each of your individual Dresden blades to create your Dresden plate. And we're going to talk about your center circles and how to fussy cut those and what size you want to cut them to and how to put all of that together. And then we're going to talk about sewing your Dresden plate and your center circle to your background fabric. So we've got a lot to cover today. And then our final episode will be episode 3. And in that will be the big finish of putting all of your blocks together and your sashing and creating your finished quilt top. So we're making a Dresden quilt in 3 episodes, you guys. So I hope you're having fun. You guys put those Dresden blades together, lickety-split. I foolishly in the last episode said, oh, you guys have like 250 Dresden blades to make. You'll be busy for a while. In like 2 days, I saw some of you posting, my Dresden blades are done. What's next? You guys worked so quickly, and I hope you had fun while you were putting it together. So now we're back for episode 2 to move on to the next step. So first of all, this is going to be your background fabric for each of the blocks. So it's this white fabric that we're going to put our Dresden plates onto. So you're going to pull your white background fabric. It has these little aqua sewing machines on it. You're going to pull that from your kit, and you are going to cut 12 13.5-inch squares. So this square is a 13.5-inch square. I cut all of mine from my kit, so you have plenty of fabric to be able to get 12 13.5-inch squares. So I have actually gone through and cut up all of my 12 background squares. So that's the first thing you can do, is go and iron your background fabric and cut up your 12 background squares. Okay, so that's step 1. Step 2 is going to be taking your Dresden blades and putting together your Dresden plate. It's there are some very important tips in this section. So I'm going to go grab my Dresden pieces while you're cutting up your background fabric, and I will be right back and we'll jump into sewing together the blades to make your plate. Okay guys, I have my Dresden blades all ready so that I can start sewing them together. So first thing is figuring out how you want your arrangement to go, what colors you want where, what patterns you want where, and just making your Dresden plate look how you want it to look. So let's take a peek at what I've got going on down here. So if you are using the Creative Grids Dresden ruler, which is the one that I used, and it looks like this, then you are going to have 20 Dresden blades to make your Dresden plate. If you are using the Lori Holt pie ruler, then you will have 16 Dresden blades to make your Dresden plate. So that's one note for you. Now, when you have your 20, for me, I have 20 Dresden blades. When you have your Dresden blades, you want to start arranging them however you want them to look, so that they look the way that you want them to look. Spacing out maybe your colors so you don't have a bunch next to each other, spacing out your prints so that you don't have the same print next to each other. Whatever works for you and pleases your eye, that's what you want to put together here. Then, this is very important. We're going to start sewing together our Dresden blades. At the end, we want our Dresden plate to lie nice and flat. So the way to accomplish that is you're going to sew your Dresden plate together in quadrants. So here's one quadrant. For my quadrant, it's going to consist of 5 Dresden blades. If you use the Lori Holt pie ruler, it will consist of 4 Dresden blades. So I'm going to sew a quadrant together, another quadrant together, another quadrant together, and my final quadrant together. Then we're going to sew this half and this half together to create the upper half, and these two quadrants together to create the lower half. Then finally, we're going to take those two halves and we're going to sew the two halves together to get your final Dresden plate. If you sew them one to another, to another, to another, to another, all the way around, your Dresden plate will have ripples in it and it won't lie flat. So when you put together a Dresden plate, it has to be sewn together in sections. And then after you sew together this quadrant, you will press your seams open so that the seams are nice and flat. Then the same for all of your quadrants. So I'm going to grab my first quadrant here and I'm going to go and sew it together, and I'll meet you back here, or actually maybe at the pressing station. I will meet you at the pressing station to go over pressing your seams open. So we'll be back soon. Okay, so I forgot that I should probably show you this part of sewing your Dresden blades together. So I have my first two Dresden blades, and I'm going to turn them and put them right sides together. Now, this is the section that I really want to be sure lines up. Your whole Dresden blade should line up, but every once in a while it might happen where, you know, based on how it's pressed, you've got a little bit extra at the bottom. Remember, this bottom section is going to be covered by that fussy cut circle in the center. So all of this unevenness down here will be covered up, so there's no sense worrying about that. But you do want your Dresden blade to have a nice connection at each of the valleys. So I'm going to put this together, right sides together. I'm going to line it up. And then I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam just right along there. And this was a really short stitch length. I forgot to change my stitch length back. So that's why that seemed to take so long. And then I'm just going to go and add my next Dresden blade, again paying attention to that connection there. Line it up at a 1/4 inch. And there we have 3. I'm going to keep adding and finish this quadrant, and then I will meet you at the pressing station to press our seams open. Okay, one more stop before we get to the pressing station. I forgot that this is very helpful. Sometimes as I'm trying to press seams open, it's hard to kind of get my finger in there, and then I end up finger pressing it before I end up pressing it. So this is helpful to do before going to the pressing station, because then your seams will all be ready, be pretty much open, and they just need that final press. So I'm using the quick, this is the Lori Holt quick press seam roller, quick seam press roller, something like that, but it's a roller and it presses your seams open. So I will show you quick how to use this. So I have my seam partially open. I'm just gonna give it a little bit of a roll. I'm gonna go on to the next one, give that a bit of a roll. That way these seams, sometimes I can stand there forever trying to get my fingernail in there to get the iron in there to press it. And it can be kind of annoying. But this, if I take the plate over after doing this to it quick, then I just need to press it. So now I will meet you at the pressing station. Okay guys, so now I've already pressed these open with the roller, and now I'm just gonna give them a good press to make it lie nice and flat. Look at that. All right, now I'm gonna head back over and I'm gonna do my other 3 quadrants, and then I will meet you to sew our 2 halves together. Okay, did you sew some of your quadrants together? I have some done here. Let's take a peek. I saved the sewing the halves together. So as you can see, I have my 4 quadrants done. Now I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna sew this one together, just like we did the other pieces. I'm gonna sew right along there, and I'm gonna take this one and I'm gonna sew this one together right along here, okay? Then we'll have 2 halves, and then you will take those 2 halves and you will put them this way, and you will sew together here and you will sew together there to have your completed Dresden, which will look like this. So once you sew your top 2 quadrants, your bottom 2 quadrants together to create a top half and a bottom half, then you'll flip it together like this and you'll sew those 2 halves together. Again, pressing all of your seams open so that you have a Dresden. Isn't it so cute? Oh my gosh, this is gonna be so darling once it's all done. So next I'm going to get my items ready so that I can show you how to secure your Dresden to your background, and we're also going to talk about fussy cutting your center circle. So I will be right back with you in just a few minutes. Okay, I have my plate ready. Here it is. I sewed all of my quadrants together and then my 2 halves together, and now I have a Dresden plate that is laying nice and flat, no ripples. So now we are ready to look at how to do the center part, and then I'll go over how to put everything together. So now we're going to focus on the center part. So what you need for the center part is this main yardage from the Quilt Fair Fabric Collection by Tasha Noel. This is included in your kit, and we're going to pick out areas to fussy cut. Okay, as you can see on here, like I fussy cut out the tree, I fussy cut out the little girl with the basket of apples. This was one of my favorites, the little girl hanging her quilt up on the clothesline. So that's what we want to accomplish with this. I've already done a little fussy cutting, so don't pay attention to the missing parts. But let's take a peek at this yardage that we have here. Okay, so I'm going to look at what pictures I want to capture in my quilt. Of course, these vintage ones, this one with the quilts on the clothesline, super cute. I'm going to focus on something that's on the edge because clearly I don't want to cut all the way across to the middle of my fabric in order to get something. Now, really quickly, here is where we need to figure out the center circle size. If you are using the Dresden ruler, you know that ruler comes with a circle. However, you could use this. It will cover the center area for your Dresden, but it's likely not going to be big enough. Let's look. To get all, like you can just get, this is your 1/4 inch seam around here. So you can just get that in there. You won't be able to get all of the clothesline in there. So I wanted to do something bigger, so which I did with this quilt as well. These are about 4-inch circle centers. So I don't have a 4-inch circle ruler. So what I did is I went around my house and I measured things until I could find a 4-inch circle. So I used my handy dandy tape measure and I measured glasses, I measured jars that I have around. What I found is my magnetic pin bowl is about a 4-inch circle. So I dumped all my pins out that I had in here to use this as a 4-inch circle. So the first thing that I'm gonna do, this is the way that I have chosen to do it, because those of you who follow me know that I make a lot of Lori Holt's stuff. Lori and I are friends, and so I love her designs. I love to support her stuff. I love to make them. We host little happy little stitch-alongs, happy little sew-alongs for her stuff. As you can see, we're making the chickens for chicken salad. So this is where Lori's applique method comes into play for me and how I choose to do the centers for the Dresdens. So I'm gonna take some of Lori's interfacing and I'm going to take my 4-inch circle. And if you wanna take a peek down here, I'm going to line this up on here and I'm going to do 4-inch circle. Then I'm going to just cut this. Oh my gosh, this scissor cuts like butter. Okay, so now I have this. this is going to make it easy, because this interfacing is so light, to go here and see exactly, do you see that? I can see that picture right through there. So I can see that it's gonna fit. I can see kind of where I wanna cut around the outside to make sure that I have enough for a 1/4 inch seam around the outside of my circle. Since this is right up at the top, I think I'm gonna start there instead of cutting down into this. So I'm just gonna take my scissors and cut very awkwardly. A fussy cut. This section out. And now come and meet me at my sewing machine. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna sew about a 1 inch stick, or a number 1 stitch length, or a little bit above a 1, around on this line, directly on the line that is drawn on the interfacing. So come to my sewing machine and we will do that quick. Okay, so I've lined up my interfacing so that it's where I want it to be. I wanted this little basket of apples in there. There's a little bit of ice cream cones or cotton candy. So I've got it lined up, and now I'm just going to do a number 1 stitch length. I've already changed it. And I'm gonna start sewing right on that line. You'll see that I didn't back stitch because I'm gonna over stitch when I get back to that starting spot. And just stay right on that line. Try to make it nice and smooth, nice and easy. Not like any crazy pivots where you're gonna create little points in your circle. Sometimes my eyes start to go cross-eyed when I watch this. I'm starting to get off a little bit, so I'm going to pivot just a little bit. We're getting back to where I started, so I'm going to over stitch by a few. There we go. I got off a little bit up there, but it wasn't terrible. So now I'll meet you back at the sewing station, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut just about a 1/4 inch. Actually, look, I have a handy dandy scissors right here. We're gonna cut about a 1/4 of an inch around the outside. This is not the scissors I would typically use, but you get the idea. And then what we do is we pull the fabric and the interfacing apart, cut a little slit in that interfacing, then we're gonna cut an X so that we can turn it. And then we're gonna turn it right side out. That way all of our edges are inside and they are protected, and we're not dealing with any sticky interfacing like I've done other methods, and this one is by far my favorite. It's very easy. So I'm gonna meet you back at the cutting station, and we're gonna shape this a little bit, and then we're gonna press it. Okay, so we have this. I just came back from the sewing machine, and now I'm gonna use my point-to-point clover turner. And I stick this point in here. This is where you gotta be careful. You don't wanna poke any holes, but you wanna shape your circle and get any bumps or flat spots out of it. Trying not to press. You don't wanna do it hard. I've had problems where it's poked through. See, and then that makes it kind of a much nicer, it's not so bumpy around the outside. Now I'm gonna go over to my ironing station. I'm just gonna press it. I'm not gonna iron it and like move the iron all over. I'm just gonna press it so that it holds its shape nicely, and then I'll be right back. Okay, I've pressed my little center shape. Let's take a peek here. That is so cute, don't you think? Now the next step is we need to adhere our Dresden and our Dresden center to the background so that we can sew it on. So what you need to do is you're going to take your background fabric. We're going to fold it in half. We're going to fold it in half again. And I'm going to go over, actually, you can either use your iron to do this, or this is where this comes in handy again too. Because I don't want to do like a, super hard crease in my fabric. I just want enough so that I know where the center is. And that works just perfect. Now I have the cross to show me exactly where the center of this cloth is. So now I can put my Dresden on here, my Dresden plate, and kind of center it. And then I can bring in my ruler, and I'm going to measure from the center to the edge. It's about 1 1/4. It's about 1 1/4. So side to side, it's centered. Now I'm going to check up and down. It's about, well, 1 1/4-ish. Ooh, it's like 1 1/2. So I'm going to move it down. One 3/8. Still move it down just a little bit. Yep. There we have it. Now the other thing you can do is you can line your, I'm going to try to keep it right where it is. But I like to line the points of my blades up with those lines. Okay, now I just feel like I have to do another check. 1 3/8. Yep. So that's pretty good. So now I'm going to pull in my applique pins, and I'm just going to secure this in a few spots so it doesn't go moving around on me. Okay, now I can just put this right in the middle. And for this, you can measure it if you want to. Like if you want to measure from blade to blade, the blade into the center, you can do this. For me, I kind of just eyeball it. Like you could probably measure from the valley to the edge. But I just kind of eyeball it to see what I think looks good. Plus you have that center right there. And once it's where I want it to be, I'm going to put a couple pins in it. Okay, now at this point, this is where, again, following Lori Holt's applique method, I grab my Sue glue, and I'm going to go around and glue under each dot, like a little tiny dot under each point around the outside, and then I'm going to glue this center part down. So I just put a little dot there. All the way around the outside. So I'm going to continue to do that. And then the same thing here. I'm just going to put a small amount of glue around the whole circle to secure it down. Okay, so I'm going to keep gluing, and then I'll meet you back here to show you what happens next. Okay, now I have glued all of my blades and my center down, and now what I like to do is I like to put a ruler over top of this and set something heavy on it for about 10 or 15 minutes to let it dry like that. So let's take a look. I'm going to pull out all of the pins. I'm going to grab, I don't have anything cute to set on it. I've got, I mean, this is cute, a cute ruler that I'm going to set on it. But then I just grab whatever's handy and plop it down on there to let it dry for about 10 or 15 minutes. Here's one that is already dry. So this one is ready to be appliqued down. So I already glued it. It's not coming off of here. It's on here. And now you can choose what kind of stitch you want to do to applique. At this point, you can either do hand applique, which I've done a video on that before when I did, oh, it's hidden, the flea market flowers table runner. And I showed you how to applique all of these cute little flowers onto the table runner. So there's a video out there already for that. For me, I have started to do machine applique. And the reason for that is because I think it goes a little bit faster. And for me, that's important. So, but I do like holding stuff in my hand and stitching it by hand too. So it just depends what you feel like doing and what method you like best. So you can definitely go around and do a hand applique method and stitch all of this down and then stitch the center down. Or you can use machine applique. When you machine applique, you can choose what kind of stitch you want. I like to do straight stitch. So on all of my chickens here, I've just done a straight stitch to applique all those down. Some people like to do a zigzag stitch, like a small zigzag stitch around the whole outside. Other people have used other stitches. I've heard of lots of people using different stitches that they just prefer. So it's totally up to you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this over to the machine quick, and I'm just going to give you a quick glimpse of how I would do the applique for myself. So I'll meet you there in just a minute. Okay, so I'm at my sewing machine and I am sewing down my Dresden plate onto my background fabric. Now, the stitch that I have chosen to use is a straight stitch just around the outside of the Dresden plate, and then I will go and do around the outside of the center circle. Usually when I do some type of appliquing, I will change the thread to match the background fabric. In this case, I have chosen to just use white. I'm not going to change for every Dresden blade. If the last Dresden quilt that I did that hangs on the wall behind me, I stitched it by hand, and so the stitch was hidden along the side. You couldn't see it when it was done. But this time I'm going to do machine applique instead of hand applique, and I'm just going to go across the top with the white thread. So I am in the midst of it right now, and I try to stay as close to the edge as I can without going off. For me, I use the inside part of this foot as like a gauge. I try to keep that on the outside of my fabric. And it's just a lot of pivot, a lot of pivoting as you go around this whole Dresden blade. And now I'm back where I started. I'm going to do a little bit of a back stitch to secure it. And now my Dresden piece is down. Now I need to go around and do this. So I'm going to start, I'm going to back stitch a little bit. Remember, if you feel like you're starting to get out of control, just slow down, reposition. back stitch a little bit. There. Now let's head on over to the sewing table and we'll take a closer peek at this Dresden plate all stitched down. Okay, you guys, block number 1 is complete. It is sewn down, it's secured to the background, it's ready to go. The only thing I need to do at this point is we started off with a 13.5-inch background piece, and I will likely trim mine down to about 13 inches. 12.5 is not going to be big enough to accommodate the whole Dresden. Well, for example, here's a 12.5-inch ruler, and as you can see, it's going to cut off part of the Dresden. So we need it to be about a 13-inch block. So I'm going to cut mine down to about 13 inches, and then it's going to be ready to go into the quilt. So I'm just going to cut it down to 13 inches and set it aside till I've finished all 12 of my blocks. And then next time, on the next episode, we will talk about how to put the whole quilt together. So by the next episode, I'll have all 12 of my blocks done, and we'll start adding sashing and borders and cornerstones and all of that kind of stuff. So we will finish the quilt. That's my plan. Now things can always change, so don't hold me to it. But my plan and my goal is to finish the quilt in episode 3. So that's the plan for right now. My other one is dry. So this one is ready to be appliqued down. So the task for right now is to do all 12 of your Dresden blocks and get them all put onto the background and then sewn down and secured down. And then I'll be back with you for episode 3 to talk about how to finish the quilt. Thank you so much, you guys, for joining me. I really, really appreciate it. I hope that you are having fun making your Dresden quilt. I think that it is such a pretty quilt. The addition of the yellow and the green, which were not in this quilt, this one kind of feels more patriotic almost to me, but this one has like a summer, like it feels very summery. So I'm loving it so far. I think it's gorgeous. I'm so happy that we are doing this, and I hope that you are having fun making it with me. Now, there were some of you who were asking for Dresden quilt kits. We are sold out. We ended up having a few left. I put them online and they sold out immediately, but we are working to see what we have left in the shop and to see if we can make up more kits, and if so, how many we can make up. So if you go to happylittlestitchshop.com and you search for Dresden Quilt Kit, click the notify me when back in stock button. And as soon as we're able to make more, I will put them back in stock. But then my suggestion to you is do not delay to get it, because they sold out really, really quickly the last time I did it. And I really don't want anybody to be disappointed. So we will do our best to provide more. And just be sure you click that notify me button so that you get an email when they are put back in stock. So hopefully we will get that done pretty soon. So stay tuned for that. Okay, I am done here. I will let you guys go. Please remember to give this video a thumbs up if you like what we're doing here at Happy Little Stitch Shop. Please be sure to subscribe to our Happy Little Stitch Shop YouTube channel. And please be sure to follow Happy Little Stitch Shop on Instagram and Facebook. And you are also more than welcome to join our Happy Little Stitchers Facebook group, where it is a community of really encouraging, inspiring people who are out there just loving the same thing and sharing this passion for quilting and cross stitch that we have. And of course, please visit happylittlestitchshop.com for all of your quilting and cross stitching goodies. Thank you so much for joining me today. Have a fabulous day, and I will see you again soon. Happy stitching, everybody. Take care.